It's a spiritual if you turn.
And I think we're going to close now with Father John Dane. And as I said, we open with the Yorkshireman and we're closing the batting the same way. Father John.
Thank you. Do you want the shortened version? Oh, bless you.
So we're down to you.
Okay. Yes, yes.
Ici Londres. Les Français parlent aux Français. Voici notre 8e bulletin d'information. Veuillez écouter tout d'abord quelques messages personnels. C'est la bataille de France et c'est la bataille de la France.
I was born in a bomb shelter at the bottom of our garden during one of the many bombing raids made by the Luftwaffe during World War II. I'd just been born and already somebody was trying to kill me. That recording that you heard was the sound of wartime resistance. It's not Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, but Morse code. 3 dots and a dash for the letter V for victory, as in this, V for victory. Being here today makes you part of that resistance movement. You stand on the shoulders of the thousands of brave men and women who fought hard for the cause of freedom. Every day during the war, the BBC would send coded messages to those brave underground resistance fighters over the wireless. That was a time when the BBC actually stood for something. Retirement was supposed to be something one looked forward to, to being safe, to being secure and growing old gracefully. But growing old under today's government means something very different. Let's see. They've eliminated winter fuel payments for the elderly, but they've given themselves 4,000 quid in heating allowances. They're taxing pensions and savings, but they're allowing hundreds of thousands of pounds in free gifts to themselves. They want to eliminate pensioner bus passes, but not their chauffeur-driven ministerial cars. They're introducing euthanasia laws to cull the elderly population, but somehow they don't seem too keen to show how it's done by being first in line. And now they're trying to Starmerize me by sending Nurse Ratched around with a hypodermic full of the latest experimental vaccine from Bill Gates' laboratory to stick in my arm. Being old isn't what it used to be. Being old makes us useless eaters and expendable, according to Klaus Schwab. Being old today puts you on the endangered species list. I can remember a time when all laws made in Britain were also moral laws. And they were made for the benefit of the whole. That's because of the moral principle that states, the good of the whole outweighs the good of the few. But today, laws are made for the benefit of the few and at the cost of the many. Tomorrow is Remembrance Sunday. It's the day we remember all those who fought and died to defeat the evil of totalitarianism and ensure our liberty and our freedom. I'm also a combat veteran. I was a soldier before becoming a priest, and I fought in battles and wars that most people today have never heard of. So tomorrow I'm going to be remembering all of those who fell during all of those many forgotten wars. The history books tell us that the total number of military and civilian casualties in World War I was around 41 million. There were about 20 million deaths and about 21 million people wounded. The total number of deaths included 9.7 million military personnel and 10 million civilians. Now, I don't know about you, but I can conceive of one death, and I can conceive of 100 deaths, but I cannot conceive of 1,000,000 deaths. What does 1,000,000 deaths look like? Well, said Joseph Stalin, one death is a tragedy. 1,000,000 deaths is only a statistic. Well, he should know, shouldn't he? He was personally responsible for millions of people dying during his regime. But those millions of people who died in the war were not faceless statistics. They were real people. They had hopes, they had loves, had aspirations, and they had futures that were cut short. But the 20 million who died in the Great War to end all wars also ensured our right to vote. It was a grudging reward the ruling class gave to some of the lower social classes at the end of hostilities on Armistice Day, at the 11th hour, on the 11th day of the 11th month in the year of our Lord, 1918. Then came the Global Depression. And during this period, the charismatic Austrian rose to power in Germany with promises of prosperity and restoration of national pride. But ambition soon went beyond Germany's borders, and one by one, countries fell to the Nazi domination. And at home, fearing invasion, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain signed the Anglo-German Declaration in Munich. And on his return to London on the 30th of September 1938, he gave his now infamous "Peace for our time" speech. Appeasement was the official policy of the Chamberlain government, but let me tell you, you can never, never compromise with evil. It never, ever works. So 11 months later, on the 1st of September 1939, World War II began. World War II was the largest and most violent military conflict in human history. Official casualty sources estimate battle deaths at nearly 15 million military personnel and civilian deaths at over 38 million. That's 53 million people dead. That's almost the entire population of England today, just England alone. But with the cessation of hostilities and the defeat of the Axis powers, 6 years later, on the 2nd of September 1945, full voting rights were granted to both men and women in Britain. But you know, this made the ruling class very, very nervous. So to ensure that only the right people would run the country, the various political parties were all systematically taken over by members of the ruling class, thus ensuring that only their kind would be in control, no matter who or what the lower classes voted for. Now you know why Anne Widdecombe refers to Westminster as the Uni Party. You know, after the war, I remember the long years of rationing and austerity. Most people today don't even know about it, but it happened. But those were also years when we rejoiced in the freedom that had been so hard won at the cost of so many millions of lives. But it's a freedom that has been eroded and restricted and reduced over the years, so that today it's only old duffers like me who can remember what it was really like. Here's an example. I remember I was about 12 and I went to a local bicycle shop to buy my first shotgun. It was second-hand, a 410 gauge, and I paid cash for it and bought it over the counter with no papers to fill in. I used it for hunting rabbits and pigeons in the fields around our house because, remember, this was rationing years and meat was really scarce. So anything I could get for the pot, that was a plus. Now try buying a shotgun like that today. Since the population was disarmed back in 1998 and strict regulations imposed, imagine for a moment having a shotgun that the authorities didn't know about and that they found out. And what would happen when they did, eh? Imagine your house surrounded by armed coppers shouting, "Hands up," and all the rest of it, and helicopters circling in the sky overhead. And you get the idea. Yet at the age of 12, I could buy one over the counter. Which begs the question, why would a government not want its population to have any guns? I wonder. Don't rush me, I'll think of the idea and it'll come. Another liberty that we had was free speech. I was brought up at a time when we actually had free speech. We practiced the maxim, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never harm me." Try practicing that today. If someone disagrees with what you said or what you wrote on social media, they can have you arrested for hate speech. But now it's gone further than that. The law, as of last year, says you can be arrested for what you are thinking. So what price the sacrifice of the many millions who fought and died so that we could have liberty and freedom in this country? Foreign dictators were defeated in a dreadful world war, but as the years passed, we became careless, didn't we? We became careless with our freedom. And we allowed domestic autocrats to rise up and systematically dismantle the liberty purchased at such a high cost. So why do I relate these two examples? Because these are the basis for two important principles I learned during my military years. Let me share them with you. One you heard a little earlier, and it's this. When people are afraid of their government, that is called tyranny. When the government is afraid of its people, that is called democracy. And the other principle is this. A free man can vote himself into slavery, but a slave cannot vote himself free. These two principles should never be forgotten. Ask yourself, today, who do you think is more afraid of whom in our country? And following the last general election, why are so many people wondering what happened to all the campaign promises they voted for? Well, that last one is easy, isn't it? It's like the mother who said to her young daughter when asked if all fairy tales began with once upon a time. "No, dear," she said. "Today all fairy tales begin with, if I'm elected, I promise." I believe the time has come when we, the people, should be taking a more direct role in how our government is run. And we've heard much about that today. It's become all too clear that the present political system is broken and is not fit for purpose. Our government no longer works for us or for the national interest, but for others and their globalist agenda, and that has to change. Today, many people believe that we're also in a spiritual war, and we are. Many believe that the enemy is powerful and strong, and it is. Many no longer feel safe in our own neighborhoods or even in our own country, and we are not. Many think that we could never defeat the enemy around us. But yes, we can. We can reclaim our liberty. We can regain our freedom. We can stop the globalist agenda. We can resist and say no to their plans. We can take back control of our neighborhoods and make them safe again. But it will not be easy. It will take courage. We must never give up. We must never give in. We must never surrender. During Britain's darkest days, Churchill also said this: "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the resistance.